Happy Monday. Thank you
Happy
all for joining
Monday.
us.
Happy Monday.
So, let us just take a few minutes to introduce who we are so that people will know what they're listening to. This is Mondays Live with Elle and Janus. I am Elle Cole from the blog cleverlychanging.com, and I blog about finance, family, and also health and wellness. So I invite you to go to my site, cleverlychanging.com, go to the top tab that says podcast, and listen to my latest episodes. You won't be disappointed. All right, without further ado, let everybody know who you are, please.
I'm Janus Adams. I'm an author, historian. I am host of the Janus Adams Show on public radio and my podcast. And you'll find me at janusadams.com. And here we go. We mothers of twins who are looking to the future and saying, oh no, we've got to do better than has been done this past year. Things have to get better for our kids, for everybody. So, what are you thinking this week?
Well, I know that today is the day that Amy Barrett is confirmed for the Supreme Court seat. And I think that's really big news. We kind of touched on it a couple weeks ago, but I think, the Democrats did protest last night, but they're not the majority in the Senate. So it's really nothing that they can do. And she's probably going to be confirmed.
Yes, and that in itself is the problem. Historically in the United States, even when the country was, this country has always been split. We don't say it that way, but let's be honest about it. But in terms of Democrat and Republican, it is really rare and relatively recent that there hasn't been bipartisan support and also bipartisan rejection of a particular candidate, but usually bipartisan support. This is a more recent development driven by many things, but also by the push to divide along some of the traditional lines of the fault lines of American history and culture, racism, sexism being at the forefront of that. And so here we go, and we have this push to put a candidate into office, a lifetime appointment that only Republicans are interested in. And they're only interested in because of the push to excuse me, I've been trying not to cough, and that was the problem. They have only been pushing, and because of the drive of Trump to get the president to get this additional person, his nominee, on the bench. And people who are pushing for that I'm sorry, they're not right thinking. They're just not, because they are thinking in terms of supposed religious freedom, but they're not allowing other people's religious freedom. To say that, to push that argument and to say my religious freedom is to discriminate against you, that is a problem. And that is one of the things that this lobby is for. Anti-abortion, nobody's forcing you to get an abortion. If you don't want to have an abortion, you don't have to have one. So you're denying my rights. And that is really, to me, what this fight is over and should be about.
So what people should understand that now Trump has appointed about 1/3 of the judges.
The Supreme Court justices.
Supreme Court judges, yes.
justices.
Justices, yes.
And because they are lifetime appointments and because they are relatively young, it means that even if we vote him out, this nefarious legacy that we should be concerned about. This is not the first time in the United States that our history has seemed to be going forward, has seemed to be going in favor of human rights. It has seemed to be going in the direction of universal rights, when all of a sudden it was pushed back, it was forced back. Just the way he came in, we're going to take America back, but back to what? And so it's not a small thing to have this kind of regressive legacy being put upon all of us for another, what, 20 years?
Right. So this would make, once she's appointed, it will make a conservative majority. And everything we look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life and what she fought for when she was on the Supreme Court, and based on Amy Barrett's track record and how she's answered questions and what she said and what she stands for, we really could be looking at a bit of a setback when it comes to women's rights. And that's something that we should pay attention to and we should talk to our children about, because I think it's important for us to understand history and understand the legacy that we are living in. And so I think, that's why we have these conversations together, so that we can have real honest conversations about what's going on in the world. And that's what we're doing right now. But it's not something that we can kind of take a back seat and just let it happen. Because I think when you do that, and then, years later, you're like, man, this is an atrocity. You're looking at the atrocity, you're looking at the problems, but you didn't speak up when it was time. So I think we have to be careful about that.
Yes, I agree with you. She is for women. She is to women what Clarence Thomas is to Black people. And by that I mean that Justice Thurgood Marshall, the first African American on the Supreme Court, was really in the forefront as an NAACP Legal Defense Fund attorney of really for the rights of Blacks and all people in this country, but really in that leadership role to overturn that crime against human rights called segregation. And Thurgood Marshall was in the forefront of that. The Republicans then had, and he retired during a Republican administration, and they went for the most cynical, retrograde candidate they could find, and that was Clarence Thomas. And the reason why I'm saying this, I don't want people to waste time on being petty, but what Clarence Thomas did and stood for was undermining everything that led to his even being appointed. If the policies that he was supporting had been in place when he was being nominated, it would have been the same old racist court that he could not take a seat on. The same thing is happening with Amy Coney Barrett. She, Justice Ginsburg, was in the forefront of the legislative movement, of the judicial branches movement. Let me be accurate about it. The judicial branches movement to really go for human rights and overturn many of the laws and the customs that were antithetical to the rights of women. They've come up with another cynical choice, whose basic judicial philosophy has been a very retrograde status quo that once again, if the things that she so-called stands for were in place, she would not be in position to be appointed. That's what I object to with both of those. We can agree or disagree with any number of people for any reason, but when you put yourself in the position that you are undermining human rights, undermining the rights of women, don't tell me about the rights of unborn children. Some of those unborn children will be girls born into a country that does not support them. So, and every religion does not oppose abortion. Interestingly, the religious sects that are most adamant about their opposition to women, to women's rights, in this case, particularly abortion as kind of a touchstone of women's rights, are all male-led. Those are the religions that do not have women in the leadership. Religions like the Episcopal Church, that is also a worldwide congregation, that have brought women into the top rungs of leadership, are those that have said it is a woman's right to choose. So there's nothing about religious freedom that comports with this.
Wow, I think, that definitely says a lot to what we will witness in the future. And I think it's something that we should all evaluate on our own and just take into account because, women definitely should have the right to choose. But I think, you can make up your mind yourself. And, I just feel like when we start to have our judges mandate the choices that women make, I think that's a step back. And so, those are the type of things that we don't necessarily want our children to still be fighting for. And so I think it's just very important that we see what direction we're going into. And you may have personal choices, but your personal choices really shouldn't be choices that you're placing on other people.
No, they shouldn't be. And you also, Maya Angelou always said it's time for thinking people to think. She particularly said that in the wake of 9/11, when the horrific acts of 9/11, there's no question about that, but that it was being translated into an anti-Muslim fervor in this country. 20 people were the ones who guided those planes. Obviously, more were involved, but Muslims are 1 billion in number, and 1 billion people in number did not, support what happened on 9/11. So she said, yeah, it's time for thinking people to think. And it is time for thinking people to think now, too. We will have a lot of pushback on people who want to say things like, well, when the civil rights movement, you call it that, but it ruined my rights. Yes, but what was it your right to do? Your right to be violent against somebody else? Your right to deny somebody else the very same things you want for yourself? Is that what we're talking about? Don't go for the okie doke of these false equivalences coming from people who don't really have your interest in mind at all. What they have in mind is maintaining power. So, but that said, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today, especially coming out of this, is what this means to us as we, in this last week, thank goodness, before this 4-year long overdue election, and and to really speak about not just why I urge people to vote for Biden-Harris on November 3rd, and I do. And Michelle Obama said, vote as though your life depended on it. And I concur. But I want to talk about it in a way that we don't usually hear discussed, and especially at last week's disgraceful town hall. Yes, he may have behaved a little bit more civilly, but his mindset was as off as it could be. And that comment about doing more for Black people since Abraham Lincoln was so not only offensive, but ignorant. Because this isn't about what any white person in the role of president has done for Black people in a country that has been racist since its founding. What it's about is what Black people have done for ourselves and for the country. The leadership role that we have taken, even during the most depraved times in our society, the leadership position. And so I wanted to talk about that for a moment. Because every positive development for Black people in this country has yielded a positive result for the nation as a whole. And I don't think people realize that. The push to end slavery, obviously, Blacks were the ones who were enslaved. But it really went to a social stratification that ultimately changed the way poor whites were viewed as well. Voting rights for Black men led to voting rights for white women, and as best we can approach it right now, universal suffrage in the United States. Voting rights for Black men, which Black people fought for, led to the removal of land requirements for poor whites and the poll tax that even they had to pay. Because the original Constitution does not even include poor white men. It is about wealthy white men. And so you had to be part of the landed gentry in order to be able to vote, really. And poll taxes were put in place. But it's Black people who fought those poll taxes. When we talk about education, the very fact that we have a public education system is rooted in the push by emancipated Blacks for education in the wake of being denied everything under slavery. Abolition, the civil rights movement. Once again, it's so funny. The civil rights movement is not all about the Black Panthers, but it is interesting that from the Black Panthers, you get the Gray Panthers even. It becomes a human rights movement for older people who had no movement to say we have to be considered and included. And it goes on and on. The Black arts movement is what led to the need, the call for relevance in education at the highest levels. And I'm going to just end it with two more things. Black Lives Matter movement. As you can see, this is being picked up by universally to look at when injustices are forced upon people. And it is a Black woman, Tarana Burke, who is the one who came up with Me Too, taking the lead once again on the physical and personal rights of women to not be assaulted by men. So when we are talking about this, no, let's not let anybody mislead us on what's happening right now. And even now, we are still taking that leadership role in these times of great uncertainty, but we have had to live with that kind of uncertainty for 400 years. If anybody has expertise in that, it's Black folks. So I'm going to just leave it there. But that is why, to me, it is just essential that we vote for conscience, we vote for courage, we vote for our lives, and we vote Biden-Harris on November 3rd. So I'll leave it with
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And, you know, it's not just about ourselves, it's also about
No,
others and human rights. It's about climate change. There are so many issues. It's about the seniors, it's about people with disabilities. There are just so many issues that we should not be ignoring. We have to look at the betterment of our nation as a whole for all people, not just the
absolutely.
select few, not just the elite.
And
So,
elite at what? What is so elite about destroying other people's lives?
right.
No, there's nothing to look up to in that. So, you know, when for my children's series, Backpacks Kids, I had come up with 6 pillars that I felt was essential that I ground the children's series on, and it works just as well for adults too. Conscience, commitment, courage, creativity, critical thinking, and nonviolent conflict resolution. So please, that's what we're talking about.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing those pillars with us. That's something that we can take into the week and think upon each day and see how we can apply those principles to our daily lives. So thank you for sharing them with us. And everyone, if you are watching the replay, please leave the word replay in the comments section. If you have future topics that you would like us to cover, please share those topics with us in the comment section. Once you leave a comment, we will be alerted and we will be checking the comment section so that we can respond to you in a timely manner. All right, everybody, this has been our Mondays Live for this week. And so we want you all to vote. Remember to vote, vote, vote. So whether you are mailing in your ballot or you are actually going to the polls during early voting, vote. That is the key. Use your voice and make a difference.
And remember how much, especially Black people, but also women, how much it has cost us to be able to cast that vote. When we don't vote, we are dishonoring ourselves and the legacy of our parents and our grandparents who fought for this. So please honor ourselves, vote.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And until next week, have a great week.
Have a great week. Bye now.
Bye.